So I am going to record this session so that we can post it on our website in a little bit as soon as it's available. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us as we open the second round of the CARES Act Creative Economy Grants. I'm Ray Gargano, the Grants Officer for the Sacramento Office of Arts and Culture. I will be walking us through a presentation today explaining the steps for round two, and then open the mic up for questions. If I can ask you to mute yourself and keep yourself muted throughout the presentation. I think we're all getting good at Zoom now. This round two is part of the original $89.6 million that the city received from the federal government. It's part of the first relief package still, and it's intended for relief, not stimulus. I think it's important that we emphasize that we follow the federal guidelines for the grant programs for the COVID relief, and many of the stipulations are all based on the federal guidelines. So it's important that you understand that those guidelines have to be adhered to, and the city is just following what we've been given. So before we get started, I really do just want to take a second to thank council and the mayor on behalf of all of us here for supporting the creative economy, all of our arts organizations. We have been the most supported city in the country as far as this COVID relief for the arts community. So we are very grateful. So like I said, this is the round two for the Creative Economy Recovery Grants. All of our information is at our grants webpage at arts.cityofsacramento.org/grants. So you can always go back there for all of this information. Both the recording of this session and this PowerPoint will be listed on that page as soon as they are available. I wanted to do a little bit of review from the first round, and I know a lot of you, I see you coming in, have grants from the first round. If you haven't, this might give you an indication of the process that we're going through for the second round as well. There are some final steps that we're taking care of for the first round. So in general, we did have $7.5 million for reimbursement and program grants for the first round of funding for the Creative Economy Recovery Grants. And you can see what our panel recommended and commission approved right there on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is an example of the timeline that we're looking at again. This is the actual timeline from the last grant. We had the applications open from July 8th through the 22nd. Staff reviewed the applications for about a week, and in that time, we looked through every application for eligibility. We took the eligible applications to panels August 11th through the 14th, and then the final panel and commission meeting where all the grants were approved happened on August 19th. So if you are part of that process right now, you understand that it takes just a little bit of time. So right now, if you look back over here, the cultural asset and the current grantees have been awarded their checks for these grants. The creative business, individual artists, and nonprofits, they are in the contract process right now. There was, for those of you who are in that process, there was, Five Star did have a little issue with the first round of grants. So you should be receiving another contract today asking for signature. So don't let that alarm you. Just know that they had to reprocess because there was just a little technical issue with those. Program grants. Now, we are not using Five Star Bank to process these grants. We are doing these through the city as a normal grant process. For those of you who do have these, they are in the contract process. Some of you already have the final signatures done. After we have a fully executed contract, I will send you a copy. From there, the city will be creating purchase orders. You will receive a copy of that purchase order. Just hold on to that for your records. From that, we at the city will create the payment for it, and we will submit a check request, And the idea is that within 30 days from that purchase order, you should have the check. Back to the timeline. Those of you in round one, especially the program grants, know that there is significant reporting that we have to do for these grants. For those who have program grants, we have a meeting scheduled Monday that we hope that everyone who has a grant can send a representative to, because it is some extensive information. For those of us who have the reimbursement grants, know that you submitted all of your information up front. So we have all the documentation for your grants already. In December or January, we will do a final report with you, and it will basically be questions, narrative questions about the grants and the grant process and the state of your organization or your art. We are waiting to see if we have additional reporting requirements coming from the federal government. So that's what we're waiting on there. Those nonprofits who received grants were invited to attend our fall training and labs based on COVID recovery. So our mentors that we have on board, Estella Sanchez and Katie McCleary, have put together a 5-session training and with additional labs that are intended to help nonprofits through this struggle with COVID. So we did our first session already, and it was really understanding the creative edge and defining buzzwords of the philanthropy process. It went really well, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. Our second session is September 22nd, and this is really about the journey of nonprofits in Sacramento. Following that, we have 3 other sessions. So if you are interested in joining us and you haven't gotten this information yet as a nonprofit organization, please send me an email, contact me, and we will get you invited to that. I would love to have this opportunity available for the second round, but timing, you'll see, just won't allow for that. All right, so just to review onto the round 2, again, like I said, this is still the same funding that we received from the federal government in April, and therefore we have the same guidelines that we have to follow. And you will find all of this information on the city website, and it's also on our website that I'll refer to in a little bit again. Basically, this is important. If you are applying for the grant, you understand that this money is intended to be relief for harm caused by the COVID pandemic. So whenever you're looking at expenditures for this, you have to ask yourself, are they necessary because of COVID-19? Were they not accounted for in the 2020 budget previously? And so this means if you've already received funding from the city of Sacramento, if you are a current grantee with us, and you have a grant to pay for your rent, you could not apply for additional rent because that has already been granted to you. So that's what that means. Even though these are reimbursement grants, we just remind everyone that the check has to be cashed. All expenditures have to be out before December 30th. And the CARES Act, again, was that large relief package that Congress passed back in March or April. And so it encompasses quite a few different programs, including the PPP, the EIDL loans, pandemic unemployment insurance, the small business program from the city, and other programs throughout the country. So the idea is you can probably receive funding from multiple programs. You just have to make sure when you're reporting that you do not duplicate your expenses. Now, the city is responsible for making sure that that does not happen within our programs. And we're passing that responsibility off to you. We're expecting you to make sure that you are keeping track of all of your finances and you're not duplicating expenses. Because at the end of the day, if we get audited, we will all be audited and have to show those reimbursements, that documentation. And if someone does not accept the documentation, we will have to return the funds. That is why we're so particular with this reporting information. Before you get started, we have all of these guidelines from the federal government on here. And these are clickable links either at this website, and we also have them on our website. The basic CARES Act guidelines from the feds, they're updated, frequently asked questions, and then some information put out by the city. So take a look at that if you haven't already, so you have an understanding, or if anything is unclear from what I'm talking about today, take a look at that first and see if you can, if that makes more sense to you. Again, the city put out this little chart so you understand any of this money we talk about today, it has to apply to these. When you ask yourself, and most of them will, the reason you're asking for reimbursement is most likely compliance with public health orders. We had to shut our doors or restrict our programming, support suffering from economic harm, and reasonably related to the function of government. So most of this, the reason we are asking for this money is because we had to comply with public health orders, which is causing us harm in our businesses and our art form. So round two, this is what's been presented to the Office of Arts and Culture as we move forward. We, City Council approved $6.9 million for us in this second round. And directed by Council are two first programs. The first one is called Sacramento Healthy Heart and Mind Collaborative. It is an arts education program intended to use the arts to help students and other youth find mentors and mental health and social emotional support during this time when they're isolated, when they're not, their schedule is just off. So that is actually going to council on September 22nd for final approval, but it is in the works. A second amount of money is this nonprofit reimbursement fast track. This is for our cultural assets of the city. You've seen this in the last round too. This was council directed money to support organizations that occupy, lease, or manage city-owned cultural assets. So what that leaves for these grants is about $3.9 million. So that's what we're looking at today. Roughly $4 million we have left for these reimbursement grants. I'm going to start talking about the changes. So if you can, this is definitely round two. So in round two, we will no longer have program grants that we had last time, just because of timing. By the time it all works out, there wouldn't be time for programs. So all of these grants, this $4 million is all reimbursement grants. And we only have 3 grants this time. So if you are a nonprofit organization, cultural organization, you will apply as for nonprofit reimbursement. If you are a for-profit creative business, you will apply for the creative business reimbursement grant. If you are an individual artist, you will apply for that one. So we hope to clear that up. Only one application is needed this time. If you remember in round one, you could apply for equipment, arts education, general operating. Now we'll put all of those together, so you only have one application. I'll break that down a little bit more. So if you are if you're a nonprofit organization that has experienced financial hardship because of the crisis caused by the coronavirus, you may apply for reimbursement for eligible general operating expenses between March 1st and September 15th. So again, this is our new time period, and I'll go into more detail about what this means for you. We're looking at reimbursing March 1st to September 15th. Within the nonprofit or organization grant, you will determine if your operating budget from 2019. So this is explained in the application. If your operating budget for 2019 was less than 500,000, you'll check that, and so on. This will help us look at equity and making sure that we distribute the money equitably across all organizations. Next, the for-profit creative business reimbursement. So if you are a creative business for-profit in the city of Sacramento and you contribute to the creative economy, you may apply for eligible general operating expenses again between March 1st and September 15th. We split out individual artists this time because this one is slightly different. If you are an individual artist, you may apply for both reimbursement for eligible business expenses and for lost work between March 1st and September 15th. What that means is lost work is easy. If you had a contract between March 1st and September 15th that hasn't been paid or reimbursed, you have to show documentation that that contract was canceled and you're eligible for reimbursement for a portion to apply for reimbursement for that contract. Additionally, if you have business expenses as an individual artist, such as you rent a studio or you have utilities in that studio, you can apply for those business expenses during this time. It does not cover individual artist living expenses. So if you think about it, we're not covering things that would be covered by an unemployment insurance. This is just business expenses. We'll have more detail on that in a little bit. All right, so applications are open today. They opened at 8 a.m. this morning and the deadline is September 30th at 11:59. This is the direct link. And I'll show you how to get there other ways too. But when you go to it, we'll be using our program called Submittable. Same program we used for the first round. You find the CRF2, that means the CARES Relief Fund, Coronavirus Relief Fund, round 2 for us. Nonprofit, you will click Submit. Now submit here, it's a little misleading. This means you open your application. So that is the word. And at the end, you will answer all the questions and then you will click submit again. So we have put together, again, a lot of support to help you create the best application possible. And I'm just going to overview this. This is all on our website as well, including the virtual Zoom link. So everything will be over Zoom. Today is our first workshop. This one is being recorded and posted. We are joining the Creative Economy meeting Thursday evening with the Atrium 916 at 5:30. So I'll be doing a similar presentation, probably a little bit briefer and targeted more towards individual artists at that point. Katie McCleary is our mentor, as I mentioned before. She is, again, doing 2 writing workshops, Friday, September 8th at 11 a.m. and Monday, September 21st at 5:30 p.m. You just click the link at that time to join the meeting. Now, her workshop is based on everything we're talking about today, and I anticipate it will be as good as it was for the first round. Katie actually took you through step-by-step of the application, and she actually wrote some templates to help answer the question. So it's so valuable. If you didn't receive a grant in the first round, or you didn't receive as much as you thought you should have, attend one of these to help you boost your grant application. For many of us, grants are a new way of looking at funding. So there is a process, and by attending a workshop like this, it can really help give you a boost in that process. I've also scheduled drop-in sessions. So these are just scheduled days and time. There's a Zoom link. You just click on it at that time and come in if you have a question. And it's really meant to, we do not record these. You just come in, ask a question. You can talk to whoever else joins the call that day, share information. If you don't really know if you have a question and you just want to listen to others, you're welcome to join us at that time too. So all of these times are listed. we have an email hotline. So if you have a quick question you want answered, you can just send an email to artgrants@cityofsacramento.org. Our staff will be looking at managing these questions and just getting back to you as soon as we can. So we don't have the staff to manage a phone line. So that's sort of a hotline. If you think of it like that, we can get better to get back to you with quick questions that way. However, if you do feel the need to talk to people, we have a set of mentors again that we brought on board to help us through this. And you can sign up for either a 15 or 30-minute meeting with them. They're starting tomorrow, September 30th, and through the day that the grant applications are available. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. So our timeline for this round, we're doing outreach. And this is also, I'm going to ask for your help in doing outreach. We want to make sure that we reach as many people as possible and that everyone knows that these grants are meant for every person who contributes to the creative economy in Sacramento. So even if you haven't gotten funding before in the city, this is a time to ask for it. And we're going to help you through the application process so that it doesn't feel so intimidating. Applications are open again through the 30th. Staff will review for a week. And again, this staff review is really important, we found. We will go through your documents to make sure it's eligible. In the first round, we contacted people throughout this process to fix things that we didn't think would pass through an audit. So we'll do that again. When we feel comfortable, we'll pass that on to our panel. So we have a set of panelists again, including the commission, Arts Commission, and they will have a couple weeks to actually review all of the applications. Our panels, which are open to the public, they will be on Zoom again, will be October 27th through the 29th. And then our final panel in a special commission meeting will be November 2nd, starting at 9 a.m. This is the date where the final decision will be made for all of the applications. So our panelists, again, you might recognize some of these people. And our mentors are listed right here too. Additionally, Melissa Cerrone, who is our arts education manager for the Office of Arts and Culture, she is available, especially for those questions about arts education. But she knows everything, so you can tap her for whatever. All right, so this is the panel process. This helps people who are going through the first round and for the second round. Just to describe what a grant panel process looks like for the city of Sacramento. So the reason we have selected to do the grant process is we believe that grant panels are a fair, transparent method of using experts in the field and community to review applications. So staff does not make decisions about who gets funding. We help the legal aspects of it. We take it through the process, but we let the community decide what the community gets. The individual panelists score applications. Together, we combine all the panelists' scores, and that creates a ranking system. So we do rank all of the applications from 1 through however many we get. And then the panels use the ranking system to determine funding amounts. Now here's how that works. So in the first round, when applications came in, we had requests for $16 million. We only had $7.5 million to award. So off the top, staff went through and we took out eligibility. So unfortunately, about 80 of the applications came right off the top as ineligible because people didn't follow the directions. That's what we're hoping to avoid this time. From that, the panel looked at the rest of the applications and they had to make some decisions about how to get the $16 million down to $7.5 million. Some of the decisions they made in the first round include they put cap amounts on some of the grants. So they did cap individual artists at 10,000 and creative businesses at 100,000. They did not put caps on nonprofits at this point. They then, after those caps were set, they looked at how much money was left, and then they looked at the rankings and they found natural breaks in those rankings. So if the top score was 60 last time, they perhaps took from 60, if you scored between 60 and 50, you got 100% of your ask. If you scored between 49 and 40, you got about 75% of your ask, and so on. So the lower your score, the less of a percentage you would get. That's why it's so important to do a good job in answering the questions on the application. So I am getting a lot of emails as the contracts come out. Some people are asking why their award, the amount of their contract, is not what they requested. This is the reason. We had more requests than we had money, so we had to make some decisions. And the panel did try to give everyone a little bit of money. That's how that was their goal. And it didn't work all the way, but that was their goal. All right, I just want to talk about completing your application. Now that you know how important it is to do a good job in creating a grant application, this is an overview. And again, if this is enough for you, that's great, but I do encourage you to attend a workshop with Katie, and it will go into a lot more details, because details and completeness matter. So the first thing is documentation, like I said, is the most important part of this grant. And we've made it a little bit simpler this time, even though that's a lot of words on a page. If after you answer your questions, you have to document your reimbursement request. So there are instructions right here, and you have to read these instructions, because it has to be a complete according to these instructions, or that becomes ineligible. If it's ineligible, we just have to pull the grant. So what you're going to do is, at the bottom, these are eligible expenses. You put the eligible expense here. So for example, if you paid your rent and you think that you want to apply for rent reimbursement, you write rent in box number 1. You put that total amount in box number 2. For example, you paid March, April, May, June, July, and it came up to $20,000 for all of your rent. You put that under column B. Then you have to show documentation that you actually paid the rent. So your lease is not good enough. You actually have to show that you paid the rent. So you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can attach canceled checks that show you paid that. You can do a screenshot of your payment confirmation. If you do it electronically, you can include a bank statement that shows you paid the rent. You can get a letter from your landlord or your mortgage firm that shows you paid the rent or the mortgage or lease. You need to put what kind of documentation it is right here. So if it's canceled checks, you write canceled checks here. And then on the canceled checks, you need to include the number 1. So you need to make it as clear as possible for an auditor, or basically for me, to go to your account and match up this expense to your documentation. We asked for that in the first round and we didn't really get it, so we've tried to make this a little bit clearer. Everything needs to be numbered and matched up. So if you just put in a bank statement, that's not eligible, right? Your bank statement needs to be highlighted and numbered based on these expenses. Like I said, these are business expenses. Individual artists may also apply for lost worker gigs, only individual artists. So creative businesses or nonprofits that had an artist coming in or scheduled a show and that was canceled, that is not eligible for creative businesses or nonprofits. A lost work or gig for an individual artist, like they had a gig scheduled at Harlow's to play on July 2nd, but you have to show proof that that happened. So you have to have documentation of the date that you were supposed to do the gig. You have to have documentation of the rate that you were going to be paid. And then you have to have confirmation that it was canceled or postponed. This could be done in contracts, emails, or a letter from the gig. So if you, let's say you were working for Harlow's, they will gladly write you a letter that says you were scheduled on July 2nd to make $500 for this gig, but it was canceled. You would submit that as your documentation and number it. We did get a lot last time, people saying, I normally make $10,000 in the month of June, so I want reimbursement for $10,000. The federal government does not accept that. They need proof that you had work scheduled because it's relief for actual work, documented work that you were scheduled for. Everything, I tried to outline it. And again, documentation must include proof of payment, such as a canceled check, a letter from the recipient, a paid invoice. It's not good enough to put in a utility bill of what you have due or past due. You have to show that you've actually paid that because these are reimbursement grants. Those eligible expenses, in general, if you were closed because of the pandemic, you can apply for these expenses that you had to continue to pay during the closures. Now, again, this is reimbursement, so you had to have paid these to get reimbursement for it. So it's your rent, your insurance, utilities, debt payments, essential staff payroll, healthcare contributions, workers' comp, essential, etc. You can go through the list on your own. We broke out equipment before, but equipment fits in here as well. Personal protective equipment or other equipment that you purchase to go virtual. I will show you where to find that information. All right, so what expenses, sorry about, there's a typo. What expenses are eligible? This is if you are an organization, nonprofit organization, or a creative business. If your organization ceased operations and remained closed this whole time since March 17th, March 1st, whatever, you're trying to remain dormant so that when it's okay to open, you've paid your expenses and you're able to open up. That's what this reimbursement is for. So you will complete that document sheet that I just showed you for any of those eligible expenses that you actually paid to remain dormant, right? If you paid your rent, you can apply for that reimbursement. If your organization continued to operate during the lockdown, like you had to go to reduced capacity, but you could still remain open because you were an outdoor, and you were still earning enough revenue, you were still earning revenue to cover your operating expenses, you are responsible for your operating expenses just as if it was a normal time. However, if you remain open at some capacity, you can apply for reimbursement for expenses that go above and beyond your operating expenses, but were required because of COVID. Again, the restaurant example is the easiest. So if you transitioned your business to an outdoor space, you stayed open, you were able to earn revenue, you're expected to pay your bills. However, if you had to make changes because of COVID, for example, you had to purchase new outdoor tables and chairs, tents, if you can apply for that. For PPE, personal protective equipment, you had to get masks and everything for your employees. You can apply for reimbursement for that. If you had to hire an additional security person to make sure people were following social distancing, that person, their salary and benefits can be applied. Same thing if you had to hire additional cleaning staff. So if you were open, it's the additional costs above your operating expenses that you can apply for. Where it gets complicated is, what if I was closed from March 17th through July 30th, and then we reopen in a partial way? You have to combine this. So you're eligible for operating expenses for when you were closed, but when you were open, you're responsible for your operations, but you can apply for additional expenses. Again, everything is reimbursement. It's things you've already paid for. You request reimbursement for that. You have to be clear in that document cover sheet. Make sure you say, line 1, when we were closed, we paid this much rent. When we were open, we had to hire an extra security person. If this is confusing to you, it's okay, because it's confusing to me too, and I'm writing this down. This is what all of those help services are for. Attend the workshop, attend a drop-in, ask me questions, sign up for a mentor appointment. We can help you through this. So this is, if you have not applied for a grant from us before, you did not apply for a round 1 grant, you are eligible for expenses between March 1st and September 15th, right? There's no restriction of that time if you have not applied before. If you did apply for a grant the first round, think of this in two bits. The first round was March 1st to June 30th. So now you can put any expense that is eligible in from July 1st to September 15th. Plus, if you applied for round 1 and you did not receive your full reimbursement, you can go back and reapply for those that were not covered in the first round. This is going to take a lot of paperwork and a lot of tracking on your part, but it can be done if you want to do that. Remember, the more you apply for, and we have to make some reductions on percentage, the more you're going to get. How would you do that? So let's say you did apply for round 1. You will have all of this information, and you can also request another copy again, but we're working with hundreds of people, so we're hoping that you can manage this on your own and then just come to us with questions. So this was the document sheet that you created for the first round, and we helped a lot of people figure this out. They looked a little bit different, right? We had listed the eligible expenses here and asked for that. We simplified it for the second round because the attachments just weren't clear enough for our auditors. But if you apply for round 1, this first one is an example of what you might have applied for, right? You wanted all of this. You requested all of this reimbursement for a total of $49,000. However, after the panel process, through that whole reduction process, you were actually awarded by the panel $31,000. Staff went in and we recreated a new document sheet, and based on what you were awarded, and we started right at the top, and we went down and we included the documentation for as far as we could go until we reached that limit. So if you look here, we included all of the rent, and then we included a portion of the insurance to equal $31,000. That means none of these other expenses were technically reimbursed through this first round. So as you apply for the second round, you could reapply for these that were not covered. You do have to rewrite this on the new document sheet. You do have to resubmit the receipts and make sure everything is eligible again. Where can you find this information? You should have a copy of this from your grant application. You should be keeping that paperwork. When you receive your contract, this is the final page, about the final page, attachment 1 of your contract. So you will have a copy of this, and then you can do the math work. If for some reason you can't find this or you have more questions, send me an email at artgrants@cityofsacramento.org. This is our hotline email, and say, I need a copy of my document sheet from the first round, and we will send it to you. Just realize I'm the one grant person in our department, and last time we had, more than 400 applications, so that ratio slows me down a little bit, but I will do everything I can to help you. All right, so when the panel looked at applications last time, they requested a little more support in helping make decisions, especially with equity questions, because equity is one of the priorities of our Arts, Cultural, and Creative Economy Commission. So you will see in round 2 some additional questions in our application process that you should be prepared to answer. And I just want to go through these and explain them a little bit. So first of all, we didn't ask specifically what is your artistic discipline or area of arts-based work for your business, but we do want that to be very clear. What is your artistic connection? Secondly, we want a brief description of your business and its contribution to Sacramento's creative economy. So you are making your best case here of why you are part of Sacramento's creative economy. So you want to make that connection as clear as possible. Thirdly, we are asking you to describe the community you serve. We're not necessarily looking for a specific answer. We are, other than that you are inclusive and you're conscientious about who you are serving in our community. This one is very important to the panelists. Oops, sorry. The Arts, Culture, and Creative Economy Commission has adopted a race and cultural equity statement. This is the philosophy with which we run the Office of Arts and Culture and with which decisions are made through the ACE Commission. In the grant guidelines on our website in multiple areas, you'll be able to find a copy of that statement. And then this question is briefly describe how your business practices or your artistic practices align with the race and cultural equity statement, right? So again, it's so important that we're looking at our community as a whole and be very thoughtful about this question. And then finally, this is the same question that was included before. Briefly describe how your business experienced financial hardship. The panel relies very heavily on how you answer this question when they're scoring. So in the last one, this is 250 to 500 words that you can answer. Some people put 3 words in there, like we closed our doors, or however many words that is. We couldn't sell our art, right? This is your essay that the panel is going to read. This is where you pull heartstrings, you tell your story, you put numbers in here, how much money you lost, what it's going to mean for you this year, next year. Tell your best story, because your goal is to get the panel's list to give you the highest score based on these questions. And so that is true of all of these questions. Tell your best story. And if this is, if you could use a little more advice on this, use our help services. Start with Katie's workshop. She will go through these and give you sample answers. Last time she put those sample answers online, and you could actually cut and paste those as a template and then add more information. I want to encourage you to look through all of the grant guidelines that I'll show you where those are. Included are the review criteria or the rubric that the panel uses to score your application. So we divide it into two categories: your narrative, which is the answer to your questions, and then your eligibility. So going through this, read through these and make sure you address all of this in your application somewhere. Even if it doesn't feel like you've been asked this question directly, though I think we have, you want to, they're going to give you up to 10 points for your description that you had lost due to COVID-19. You're going to get up to 10 points for explaining how these dollars will provide relief to your business or organization. You could get up to 10 points for explaining that your organization was sustainable financial condition before March 1st, and that you contribute to the creative economy. I put those two together. So this is a hard one. Nowhere do we ask you in a question if you were financially stable. But one of the requirements of these grants is that you were in business a year before March 1st, 2020, right? So the federal requirements say you couldn't just start a brand new organization on April 1st and say so that you could get reimbursement for these funds. You had to be in business about a year before that. So in your explanation, you want to hint to that you were thriving, that you were, or you were, maybe you were a newer organization and you were just getting off the ground because we were in really good shape. Explain that and explain how that contributed to Sacramento overall. Finally, you'll get up to 10 points when in your question of that your business practices align with the race and cultural equity statement. In the next category, you can get up to 10 points for your documentation and eligibility. So let me explain that first of all. If your documentation is not present, if it's not eligible, if it would not heed an audit, we will pull your application altogether before the panel sees it. The panel will see those, and then they will give you up to 10 points for looking at your thoroughness, right? They're judging your application. Were you thorough, and did you follow the guidelines and instructions? This is the teacher question. Did you follow directions? Please follow directions. Those of you who've been through the process know the next part is just city requirements. So far I've talked about federal requirements, and that is about writing your grant. In order to receive money from the city of Sacramento, these are required. It doesn't matter if you're an individual artist, a creative business, a nonprofit. You have to have these 3 steps confirmed. One is a supplier account with the city. This is where you apply in a self-service portal. You open a supplier account with the city, and this is where you put in your W-9 tax form and your California 590 tax form. It's important to note that unless you are a nonprofit, this is earned income. These grants are earned income, and you will be taxed on it at the end of the year. So we're not tax accountants, so I can't give you any advice, but I will say you will be taxed. So you want to keep some of that money aside to pay for those taxes. Secondly, and these are federal and state taxes, the city requires an annual business operation tax. So you have to have, we call them BOTs, so you will see that a lot. If you haven't opened a BOT yet, you have to do this, and you can do this online. It's an annual tax that you pay in order for us to give you money. It's minimal, right? And it's based on the amount of money you anticipate getting. since it's annual, a couple things. If you already opened this for 2020 or for the last year, if you were in round one and you already opened it, you are set. You already have both of these. If you're brand new, you will have to open one. Note that once you're in the tax system, you will get an annual notice to pay this each year. So the theory is if you do business within the city of Sacramento, you have to pay your due diligence tax. So every year you'll have to repay that minimal tax. If you don't pay for it or cancel this, when it comes due, they do start applying a fine, and that fine continues to accumulate until you take care of it. So just know that if you're just getting this because you're doing business right now in the city or you're living in the city, and you have to cancel this at the end of the year. If, let's say, you've been doing business in the city for the last 20 years and you never paid a business operations tax, now is the time to get on board and follow the city code. Additionally, this is for some people. If you have a home office, if your office is located in a residentially zoned area, you have to pay for a home office permit. This is a one-time fee. It's $156. It's not annual. It's just one time, but you will have to pay it. So when you go to apply for your business operations tax, when you put in your home address, it will automatically tell you if you need a permit, a home office permit. We can help you with this as well, and we did a lot of this, but know that that is a requirement that, yes, everyone has to go through this process. When you're doing this process, I just want to emphasize that your name is the most important thing, in my opinion, that you own, right? So I want you to really hold on to your name and realize how you use your name in your business, whether you're an artist or a creative business or a nonprofit. It's important to know that from the city level all the way through the federal government, you're traced based on the way you input your name in certain situations. And we're finding a lot of issues with this because legally you have got to enter a contract with your legal name. So what is your legal name? It's how you fill out your tax forms. So when you create your W-9, if you put your name, your personal name here, and your social security number, that's your business name, right? That is how you are identified. That is how you pay taxes. That is how the city and the feds identify you. If you are a business and you put in your business name and you put in a tax ID number for your business, that's how you're identified. So that it's really unclear because, you know, I do my business under Ray Gargano, but let's say I have a business called Gargano Enterprises. I have to apply for this grant through my business name. So I follow Ray Gargano and I use my social security number. That's how I need to apply for everything, including this grant. And look, this is just a screenshot of how the city tracks that. So they take your W-9 form and they copy it exactly. So when we submit this to the federal government for taxes, this is the name that they're going to submit. This is the address they're going to submit. When we contract with you, we contract under this name and under this address. So some important things about that. Make sure you apply with the name that you want contracted with, and make sure you use an address that's within the city of Sacramento, because only people and businesses located within the city of Sacramento are eligible for this funding. If you need to change this, we have processes to make sure that you change this. but for this instance, make sure you apply with your name that is on your tax forms. All right, so that is a ton of information. I have some questions in the chat, but we've been pretty good about, if you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll do some popcorn taking turns. So feel free.
I have a question if you can hear me.
I can.
Excellent. Is there a cap for individual artists for this round that we could be informed of?
At this point, we did go to commission on Monday. We had a meeting and they did not put any caps on it thus far. The panel might put a cap like they did last time. I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's advisable that we just apply for what our losses or reimbursements are, and then they will cap it just like they did last time in the event that happens.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Ray, this is Lisa with California Lawyers for the Arts.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a little confused. Something had said reimbursement, you must show expenditure by the end of December, but all expenses need to have been incurred as of yesterday. Is that correct?
Right. So let me explain that. The money, the federal dollars have got to be spent, not even given out by the city by December 30th. And because of the timeline and our process for the grant, we had to do a cutoff for the reimbursement to make sure that that was spent. So since this is reimbursement, the grant is September. You have got to show all of that you've already spent the money before September 15th.
Okay, thank you.
So we couldn't allow you to enter receipts for November or October because they haven't happened yet.
Okay.
That is a legal question that we dealt with.
I have just a further question about clarification on that. This is Tavares Blackman. I'm curious, do the grant funds from round one have to be spent by the grantee by December 30th?
So technically, I'm going to say you need to cash that check, right? Mm-hmm. You've already spent the funds because it's reimbursement.
Okay, thank you.
And I noticed some people have read the contract that we sent out, and it's some legal language that I'm not a lawyer, so I can't advise, but it does confuse the common person like me, but it means you've already given us documentation that you spent that money. This is reimbursement for it. Just make sure you cash that check.
Ray, I've got a question. This is Bob Rich. If expenses for an individual artist or loss of gig money started in the first round and continued in the second, such as classes that were canceled for the first part continue to be canceled, can the documentation for the first round simply be resubmitted, or do you need new documentation to show the continuation?
That it really depends. You need to show, if you can't ask for, if it was reimbursed in the first round, you have to make sure there's a distinction that you're not asking for that again. So if it was reimbursed, you need to do a separate something that shows that you're looking for July 1st through September.
Okay.
If it wasn't reimbursed, you could do the whole thing, but make sure you show the timeline. So that lost revenue was really tricky, but you guys did a great job of demonstrating. For some of the artists, those class questions were really tricky because you said, oh, I was going to have 10 classes, but I didn't have them. You can't be reimbursed for that. Sorry, this is beyond you, Bob. So if you, however, had 10 classes scheduled and they were with a client and you had a contract for that in some sense, even if it was an email or a sign-up sheet, and those were canceled and then you're not making the money for that, you can apply for those canceled, but you do have to show all of that paperwork.
Okay.
Also, I have another question. If for individual artists, is it reimbursement and lost gigs, or is it just lost gigs?
For individual artists, this time for round two, it's both. but it's business expenses, not personal expenses.
Excellent. Thank you.
Browen, you should have received an email yesterday from me about the asset grant, so check on that. It might have not gone to you, but I'll try to remember to resend it.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Yes, I applied for the first round, but I have a small business which was not in boundary of city of Sacramento. It was in Carmichael, and
Yeah.
it is still in Sacramento County. But my application was dropped. Yesterday, I received an email, and I was encouraged to apply for the second round. Just I'm wondering if I do apply for the second one, it will be the same as the first round, or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have. I didn't go through and pull that out. The number one rule is it has to be within the city of Sacramento, because that's how the federal government gave money to this. The county got their own money to disseminate throughout, and we don't have any say so on that.
It means it is worthless to apply for the second round.
It is. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Sorry.
What was the email that I got, and I was.
I know. I apologize for that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. If we only got a certain percentage in the original award, can we apply for the remaining unfunded percent as part of the ask? Yes, I covered that, so I hope you understood that. You have to do clear documentation.
I had a question. I applied last time and somebody responded to my application, and we kind of went back and forth. I've been throwing weekly parties for years. I don't have a contract with them because I just see them every week and they pay me a percentage of the bar. How would I even go about proving that? I mean, I have flyers. We've been on the news. We've been at Concert in the Park, for both parties. Motown Mondays, Silent Sundays. How would I prove that I got paid weekly for those? They're obviously not happening because of COVID.
Yeah, you need to have some documentation from the owner that explains it. That's a tough one that we went to the city attorney about. There has to be documentation saying that you would have made at least this much money, guaranteed. If you, it can be a letter. It can be a letter.
10% of the bar and 20% of the bar, so it's not like
right. Like again, that's like someone saying, "I should have made $10,000 last month, so pay me $10,000." And the auditors come back and say, "How do we know you were going to make that money?"
Well, but it's like we were in Best of Sacramento. We've been on the news a bunch of times. I work with Concert in the Park and Doco, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a million ways to verify that this is really happening and was happening for years.
Yeah.
So how do I prove that to you?
So those situations, everything is about contracts. So it's got to be something that's written down by. So let's say that you have this somewhere and you just forgot that you have this. Okay.
Yeah.
The person that hires you, or the people that hire you, they say you have written in an email or a contract somewhere, for the next year, you're scheduled for these days, you're going to make at least this much money and more if the gate is above this amount. That's what we would need for this.
Okay.
So if you can find that somewhere.
Well, there's that. I mean, it's just a deal. It's like the percentage of the bar,
I know we've realized that a lot of people don't get contracts in our city, and the auditors track that.
What about a 1099 from last year from them?
The city attorney wouldn't accept that because it has to be based on, like, that's conjecture.
So it probably isn't going to work then?
Yeah, unless you in your history somewhere you have that written, or you can.
Well, it's just there's no amount. It's just a percentage. It won't exist as an amount. And if it did, it would be from like 6 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So there's nothing. All
Yeah,
right.
I guess we tried that. That came up a lot, especially like festivals or events where they're like, last year I made $400 at this festival. That was last year, unfortunately.
But these, I understand that. I have a million events that I'm supposed to be reimbursed for also. But I mean, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about these things every Sunday and Monday night for years. These two events happened, and I got paid a cut of the bar, and it has been my job for years. And like, it just, if that isn't able to be covered by this, then it seems like that's a hole in the process and not, yeah, because there's a lot of creative people that do that. I know a lot of people have weekly events that they get paid for, and that's kind of the way that people have weekly jobs in this city with creative stuff.
I know, and we're learning that you should have. I'm the messenger. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
we're learning that you need to ask for a contract.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. So make sure that everything for nonprofit reimbursement, we don't know if there's a maximum. Apply for as much as you have. Submittable does have everything stored online, but you might still have access to I'm not sure. If you had an email, you might be able to go back in and see it, but you can let me know. So first of all, if you are a nonprofit organization, I didn't mention this, you have to make sure that you have a business occupancy tax, operations tax exemption on file. Everyone who got a grant from the first one, we made sure that happened. But if you're new, we'll have to make sure you have an exemption on file. We're not looking at fiscal years for this reimbursement, so you don't have to worry about fiscal year to fiscal year. You're just looking at the time period, March 1st through September 15th. Could the bar owner write a letter on letterhead laying out the agreement that already exists? Yes. Are you still accepting QuickBook info and ledgers? Yes. You have to make sure that it's clearly outlined, highlighted, and the number, whatever the expense is, you match it up to the expense on that document sheet so we can match that up. Can you apply for reimbursement for materials for jobs or commissions that did not come to fruition due to COVID-19 under equipment? So we don't have equipment grants this time. This is just reimbursement. If you are an individual artist and you have a contract, you have to show that the contract was signed, the amount was there, and that it was canceled. Hope that answers that. The funds are not able to go through December. The cutoff date for the reimbursement that you have to show is September 15th. So for you, that December date, the money has to be spent. You have to cash your check by December 30th. But for reimbursement, your expenses have to be March 1st to December. March 1st to September 15th. Those of you who are still on, you can continue to ask questions if you have them. I am just going to share the website very quickly so people know and see this. So this is our Creative Economy Recovery Grant website. You can get to it at arts.cityofsacramento.org. If you want to go direct to the page, it's /grants. So all the information that I went over today is here. We have it translated if you need that. Notice we have, please note the legal address of all applicants must be within the city of Sacramento. Right here is the apply button. It takes you directly to that page that I showed you in the PowerPoint. If you want to apply, you click submit.
Ray, I have a question. This is Plachette with Sac Cultural Hub.
Uh-huh.
So We had a contract with the county that we actually sent a proposal. We invoiced in February. Then we were asked to revise the proposal, and the dialogue was going back and forth on email in March. And we were just about to go into contract mode, and we have that email exchange. But then COVID happened, and the email communication actually stopped. And we followed up with email, but we realized that because of COVID, that, a lot of the county offices had closed down. It was a campaign that we would have been included on because that's what the contract was for. Can we go ahead and submit that?
As a business, no. Businesses and nonprofits can't apply for lost work. You can only apply for business expenses.
Okay.
So back to this, the document cover sheet is right here, the new one. You just click on that and it will give you a Word version you can download. These are the guidelines from the federal government if you want to look at those. And then here is our toolkit of help. You obviously found this already, so if it's redundant, this is how the links are right here to get into all of these workshops. We do have an FAQ sheet, so look through that. I've updated it. Here's the email hotline is here. If you want to schedule an appointment with any of the mentors, you click this button and it takes you to that program to schedule. The drop-in sessions are here. And then the grant guidelines. These are important. Read through all of these guidelines before you submit. It gives you all of the information. And this serves as the first part of our contract. Everything that we put in our contract is written in these guidelines. Additional funding. So this is the last funding that we will get through this first CARES Act. There is no more for the city. It has been doled out by council and the mayor, the $89.6 million. Congress is back. They're rehashing the next, the Democrats called it the HEROES Act. The Republicans aren't calling it anything really. If they come to an agreement, we hope again that there is some money that will come directly to cities. We don't know how it will work this time. If it happens, we're also hoping that it's stimulus money that we can apply towards moving forward and not just looking backwards. We'll have to wait. This is the time to send a letter to all of your representatives and say, we need money. The city council has no more money to give out at this point from the federal dollars. So your advocacy does need to start with our elected officials at the national level. So send that time, send them a thank you, and how much this was valuable in the first section, and say it's not enough. That's my 2 cents about advocacy. Is there any grant program for the Sacramento County? At this point, we haven't heard of any. We do have one thing coming up in October and November. It's pretty specific. We were granted about $15,000 from the California Arts Council. It's all, again, part of this CARES Act money, and that money will go with an equity lens, and it will reach into the county. So if you are, and it will be for nonprofits. So if you are eligible for that, keep an eye open in October. I think we're going to announce that. It is a small amount of money, but I think we will be able to give priority to county organizations that are not within the city. All right, it looks like I've answered all the questions in the chat. Does anyone have any other questions at this point? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Ray, this is Lisa again.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is too complex, I can have a private mentor conversation. But when you went over what expenses are eligible, we received reimbursement for round 1, and we did include rent. We are still offering all of our programs, but we're offering them online. But we're also still paying rent and utilities on our physical space that we can't use because everybody's working from home. That just read a little more confusing to me than it did in the round one, and I'm wondering if it's the same.
It is the same, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, and I did mean to clarify this, so it's, thank you for asking the question. You know, we haven't set a percentage amount or anything like that, but really and your programs I know are on a sliding scale, so a lot of people are not paying for those. So you're not earning enough revenue to cover your operating expenses.
Correct.
And a lot of people have asked, we have some education programs that are online. You know, we've tried to keep in contact with our community. We haven't shut down completely, but we're not making the revenue that we should. You should apply.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Sure.
Thanks
Okay.
for all of your hard work.
Oh, thank you. The one thing that keeps me going is knowing that people are benefiting from it. I wish that we had all the money in the world, and I wish that I could help every person the same thrive, but we're just hoping for survival. So I want to thank all of you for joining us and dealing with our processes. Our intentions are 400% good, and please reach out to me if you have any other questions, and take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.